Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolfe. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. Time now to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. It's the last day of summer, and we begin with the NBA because Kevin Durant apologized for the uproar he caused on social media this week. Durant was caught tweeting in the third person saying, quote, he didn't like the Thunder organization or playing for head coach Billy Donovan. He discussed his use of social media yesterday.
I don't regret clapping back at anybody or talking to my fans on Twitter. I do regret using my former coach's name in that former organization that I played for. That was childish. That was idiotic. All those type of words. I regret doing that, and I apologize to him for doing that. But I don't think I'll ever stop engaging with my fans. I think they, really enjoy it, and I think it's a good way to connect us all. But I'll scale back a little bit right now and just focus on playing basketball.
So Durant went on to tell USA Today, quote, no, there's no different account. I was just on there talking. It kind of looked like that way. It did kind of look that way. I haven't slept in 2 days, 2 nights. I haven't eaten as well. Wait, what's... I was going to ask for your reaction, but maybe I don't have to. You're eating this up.
All right, Kevin Durant needed... I don't know who was in Durant's life growing up. I had a great man named Anthony Mange, my best Italian godfather, teach me at a very early age. There are sometimes three
How many Italian godfathers?
I have a bunch of them.
Okay.
He taught me at a very early age, sometimes there's only 3 words you need to know. Deny, deny, deny. You can never cop to this, KD. You had to go to your grave claiming you were hacked, you fired a social media manager, you can go the Ted Cruz route and say there was a young intern who had the account. I don't care. You can't admit to it. You certainly can't admit to it and then not fully admit to it.
Everything.
So, I sent the tweets, but I didn't think it was a different account. I just decided to go third person and talk about the Thunder as they and KD as he. And, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But most importantly, this is a real, in seriousness, window into KD's psychology on this. He is still struggling with his decision. He was not in that.
Yes, that's obvious.
Cece, he says in the longer version of that audio, I don't regret clapping back at people. He was not clapping back at people. If these tweets were bleep you, KD's a champion, he's got $300 million bucks.
Right.
That's one thing. But they were not. He was relitigating his decision. He was engaging in the debate about whether or not he should have gone to Golden State. And that shows me, in his own head, even as an NBA champion and as a finals MVP, he is still conflicted about what he did.
Nick, I've said this before when you and I are working together. KD is what I believe to be a mama's boy, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think he has a very good relationship with his mother. It's endearing. They're very, very close, even at this stage of his life. And also, given some of the other things that I've seen, and most of the time when you're a mama's boy, you love to be liked, or you're always looking for approval. And I know LeBron, he's lived a different type of life because he's been under the microscope since he was 14, on the cover of many magazines at the age of 16, 17.
16, yep.
So how he's come up in the public light. And LeBron, he's a mama's boy. Well, that's all he had in his life. Mom's built a little bit different, but his dealing with rising to stardom has just been totally different. And you say, well, why would you bring LeBron into this? Because LeBron is the best player in the world. And we look at this information and we forget this is the second best player in the world. I mean, he's got a couple $100 million
at least.
I mean, and he's talking about, well, I still want to engage with my fans. He's not engaging with his fans. He's engaging with the people who aren't his fans. So I mean, what we've seen in the last couple days from the NBA with Kyrie, with KD, to me, I beg the question, man, college is really important. Or just growing up around normal people, like it's really,
man, this is why,
really
thank
important.
God, and thank God LeBron exists, because you football guys, if this was the best basketball player in the world, would be able to call the entire sport a bunch of emo millennials.
Right.
Thank goodness LeBron is the standard bearer, because if he's not there and the best player in the league is doing this,
yes,
setting up fake social medias to argue.
If this is Tom Brady,
I can't.
If this is J.J. Watt,
can't deal.
I mean, both of them get so much criticism as it is for being great.
Wouldn't it be nice if he could just go on as Kevin Durant and respond in full honesty the way he wanted to respond, whatever he wanted to say, however he wanted to say it, and people wouldn't criticize him? I think that he would get the same backlash.
But he
now,
does that, Jenna. Jenna, he does that.
But he doesn't get to say, apparently he doesn't get to say exactly what he wants. He needs to create fake Twitter accounts for whatever reason to be able to say exactly what he wants to say.
Okay, wait 1 second. For the people in the public eye, tell me who is saying exactly what they want to say.
But
no
because
one.
you can't.
No
Because you
one.
feel like you cannot do that. I'm sure there are things you would love to be able to say that you just can't say.
Right.
And it's a different bevy of a list of things than Kevin Durant can't
And his
fully
level
say.
my level of fame is nothing
Of course.
compared to his.
This isn't about money, and it's not about who raised him or where he came from. He wants to be able to fight back, to justify leaving Oklahoma City,
right,
and this was the only way he thought he could do it.
But he told us the justification would be the championship. The justification would be the winning.
Well, Kyrie also told you a lot of things that
But
weren't
we
exactly
now, at
true.
least with KD, the results are in.
Yes.
You won the championship. You hit the 3 over LeBron. And I'm sure after he hit that 3 over LeBron, he started a group chat with himself talking about how awesome it was. But the other things from these tweets, one of the tweets he sends, his roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ. That is, to quote your favorite show, that's kind of yada-yadaing the sex. Just him and Russ. It was just me and the 4th best basketball player alive. Can you imagine if Karl Malone was like, listen, I don't know what you want me to do in Utah. It's just me and John Stockton.
That's the point.
But I disagree with you on that point because, to me, see, I don't mind the truth part because I'm not in love with Billy Donovan as a head coach.
He took a shot at Billy Donovan as well.
Okay, no problem. Because I believe that there's some truth there. And he's not going to win a championship with him and Russ. And that's all that franchise does have is him and Russ.
See, they were up 3-1.
But they didn't win.
And still, it's his opinion, and he wanted to be able to say it.
Okay.
How else do you say it? Chris agrees with him.
No. I don't agree with how he went about it. But I'm just saying that's why I believe that. I mean, he's a lot like Kyrie being disingenuous. He said some things in there that would validate that it was him. I mean, the coach and Russ, those are legitimate. But be a man. Stop making all these other excuses.
But you just said nobody does that. You just said no one says exactly how they feel. So how can you say be a man?
Okay, listen. In this situation, I'm a free agent. I decide that I'm going to leave OKC. I talk to Russ, and when people ask me, I tell them I made the best basketball decision because I believe the owner, Jerry West at the time, the front office, Steve Kerr, they're better for me going forward. That's saying the same thing. This is a better roster than where I was.
But
didn't he say that?
Of course. Okay. This is just a more blunt way to do it. But there are so many. I wish we could get from the grave guest expert Freud on the show. What about the fact that he acknowledges in these tweets that he hoped people wouldn't know was him, that he didn't think he could beat this team. And then he has Nike release sneakers that say, can't beat them, join them. As if that's an unfair arrow being slung at him. Those things written on the sneakers, were those things people were slinging at him on the internet? Or were those things coming from his own head? Wait, have I changed? Because that's on there. Was this kind of the scared move? Like, this is a guy who If we had told him, hey, here's how the season, if you go to Golden State, you guys win the title, you are one of the front runners for MVP of the league until you get hurt. You then win. You then win Finals MVP. Will that make you happy? I think his answer would have been absolutely. And now he's sitting there this summer. And this summer, what's he done? He goes on a podcast and takes shots at Steph Curry's shoes. That's
we are going to discuss this further.
I think the NBA should change their name, not NBAP. National Basketball Association of Pettiness.
Oh, thank God. We all held our breath there.
We're now joined by Fox NFL analyst and three-time Super Bowl champion and big fan of Moana, Mark Schlereth.
Yes,
hey, Mark, how you doing?
I am
All
doing
around
well.
smart guy.
I'm doing well, and you're welcome.
Okay, it is now Nick Wright's favorite part of the show, Power Rankings time. Yeah. All right, we're going to run through the first few here. Sports Illustrated has the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, the Falcons at 2, Patriots all the way down at number 3, probably because it's the lowest they've been since birth, Steelers and Raiders rounding out the top 5. So, Mark, I'm going to start with you here. Have the Patriots looked like a top 3 team to you? Were you a little surprised by where they got placed on this list?
I'm not surprised. Do they have Belichick?
Yeah, they do.
Do they have Brady?
Yeah, they do.
I am not surprised at all, and they're not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. And I think you could look at their defense. I think their back end is pretty good. Mm-hmm. They've had some busts in coverage. I think their front seven. When you look at front sevens around the National Football League, I think that they're probably pretty marginal compared to most.
Yeah,
but here's
middle
the
of the
thing.
pack.
Right. Here's the thing about the New England Patriots. Having played against them a bunch, there's certain teams, and we were talking about intelligence in the break. There are certain teams that test your intelligence as an offense. And I've always looked at them not from a personnel standpoint of being able to really test you, but from a mental standpoint. And what they do to you as a defense is they put you in situations where you're confused. And they have the versatility in their front seven where guys have the duality to play both a D end and a linebacker. And so they'll put out groupings, and then they'll just stand around. And you have to break a huddle and decide, is this a 4-down front? Is this a 3-down front? Are they in nickel? Are they in base? What are they in? And these are like this is upper level football talk, but it makes it incredibly hard because to block people, especially in pass protection, to block anybody, you have to understand the differences. And so when you have a guy out there, a Nikovic back in the day, right?
Yes.
That can play defensive end or can play outside linebacker, you have to designate that guy. And if half of your team has designated him as a defensive end and half are designating him as a outside linebacker, there's going to be a break in your protection. And they're going to get a sack without physically beating anybody. That's what they do to you on a consistent basis. So they always have had players in their front seven that have the duality to play multiple positions, and it makes it very difficult to designate who's playing what. Therefore, protection breakdowns, that's how they get pressures. That's how they get sacks. That's how they beat you. And this is still, in my mind, the smartest team in football, week in, week out.
The Pats are a top 3 team, especially after week number 2, because they got clobbered in week number 1. But that very seldom happens. They have a couple injuries you have to be concerned about. He talked about their defense. We know that they'll be a lot better in November and December. But with Brady and Belichick, they're going to be in the top 5. This offseason that they had, we thought it was going to be a lot better. But seeing Tom Brady healthy, Gronk being semi-healthy, I mean, they're going to be one of the top 3 teams. And the battle with New England is how many games are they going to win? And are they going to have home field advantage? Because they can be anywhere in the top 5. If they get home field advantage, they're number 1 or number 2, depending on the NFC.
And think about this a couple of years ago. Remember when Kansas City went out there a couple of years ago and just absolutely just...
It was in Kansas City.
It was in Kansas City, right.
Yes.
They beat them down. And remember, Brady was done, and, the New England Patriots break up the Patriots. They're no good anymore. And then they just turned around. Remember, Bill Belichick was on to Cincinnati. And then they ran roughshod through the rest of the league and won a Super Bowl. I mean, this is what they are. This is who they are.
That is definitely who they were. And that,
you went past tense on me, Nick.
Well, that right there.
2 weeks.
That That right there is the basis of the entire sporting public, it would seem, at least slightly, if not greatly, overvaluing the Pats right now. It is based on who their coach and quarterback have been. It is based on something they did 3 seasons ago, 4 seasons ago, I guess, actually. You cannot say based on how they've played this season. They're one of the 3 best teams in the sport. They played one other.
Where should they be on the list then?
I did mine. I didn't even know SI was doing there, so I just did mine on Twitter last night.
He does
my top 10.
every day, by the
No,
way.
I do
every
it
day.
No,
3 times a day, Nick.
No,
you're always calling me. Oh, I just got a new list. I put it together. Do you want to hear
I
it?
do a lot of lists, but I also do. I'm organized with this.
Nerdo.
Tuesday night NFL Power Rankings at Get Nick Wright if you would like to see them. I had the Pats 9. I think that's fair based on how they've played. They played a good team in Kansas City, a Kansas City team we might be slightly overrating as well because we think the Pats are awesome, but a good team, my hometown Chiefs, and the Chiefs went to New England and beat them soundly. They then played a team that I think most people believe to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they went to their place and beat them soundly.
One of the worst defenses.
Yes. Well,
and they're a lot better team playing at home.
I think maybe the worst defense.
So make sure you give all the characteristics of who New Orleans.
Okay, well, I think they are one of the worst teams because they have the league's single worst defense. I don't think they have one of the worst defenses. And if we were looking at this team without the proper nouns, just the details on them. Okay, so this offseason, what happened to them? Well, their most reliable receiver went down with an ACL injury. Okay, coming into the year, they were really going to rely on this major free agent acquisition. He has 4 catches for less than 100 yards through 2 games, despite playing 1 game against a terrible defense. Okay, their other big weapon on offense. Well, he's been injury-prone the last few years. He went out in week 2 with an injury. We'll see what happens. All right, what about on defense? Well, the top player they picked in the draft, he's on the IR, a player they traded a draft pick for. They already cut him. They play the same area because they're trying to upgrade their pass rush. Another pass rusher, Shea McClellan, he's on the IR. We would be saying, oh, okay, even though greatest quarterback ever in the argument, if not the number one, greatest coach ever in the argument, if not the number one, they have some bigger issues. The Patriots are being given, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. I don't know that they deserve this expansive benefit of the doubt they're being given.
I would look at them like this, and I think this is like the easiest thing in the world to do as a fan of anything. I don't follow basketball, but I can watch a basketball game and know that Russell Westbrook is the best athlete on the planet. I can just, it doesn't take any sports acumen for me to understand that. I can see that. And I think it's easy to look at talent. It's easy to print up a roster and go, wow, their front 7 is pretty marginalized.
Yeah.
You know, they've got some issues with their receivers. I know that winning football games is more about your understanding of how to exploit another team's weaknesses and your understanding of football in general, having enough football acumen to be able to do those things. So it's so much more than talent to me. That's what this game is.
We believe in the systems more than we believe in talent. Because all 32 teams have talent.
Yeah, you got to have great talent, but you've got to be able to put that talent in positions to win. And that's what they do better than anybody else. So I'm going to continue to give the Patriots, and I understand your arguments, and they're good arguments, but I'm going to continue to give them the benefit of the doubt because I know how smart they are as a football team.
I mean, they are a proven commodity. For me, intellectually, I've been battling Bill Belichick since 1987. That's when he was the defensive coordinator with Bill Parcells of the New York Football Giants. Played him twice a year, all right, for 3 years before I went to Minnesota. So I followed his career. I've played against his defenses a bunch of times. And forget about the list for 2 games. There's respect for what these guys have done in this league. Now, you had a bevy of things that you're poking holes in. Now, those 8 teams you have in front of them, give me the laundry list of them. Like, what makes these teams so perfect?
No, nobody's saying...
Because it's a lot of bad football out there right now.
Correct.
And you got 8 teams that you have seen with your eye that you think that they're going to be able to beat Belichick and Brady? Like, that's an interesting take.
Okay, but so if it is not the argument that there is a perfect team or a flawless team. But the argument is this. If you are a team that when we're doing these lists, when we're doing these rankings, you've lost. as opposed to a team that has not lost.
Yes.
If you're a 2-0, take the Carolina Panthers, for instance, right? They obviously have issues protecting Cam.
Right.
Cam has had issues coming back from the injury. I thought game 2 was better than game 1, but he hasn't looked great. However, they're yet to lose. You tell me every day on this show that pro football, it is week to week. Can you get the win? So if you guys are giving the Patriots a benefit of the doubt based on history, that I am giving the other 2-0 teams in the league. I have them 9th. 7 teams are undefeated. 7 teams right now are 2-0.
Real quick question. Do you have Pittsburgh listed ahead of the New England Patriots?
I have Pittsburgh number 1.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If Pittsburgh were to play on a neutral site, the New England Patriots, based on history and based on the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers have not been able to stop that offense, they have not been able to contain Tom Brady in that offense, would you pick Pittsburgh or would you pick New England?
Based on history? No. Based on this year?
But Nick,
yes.
You can't.
I can't take the history out.
I understand your argument about based on history. I understand game to game. I understand let's just focus on Sunday. But if there's one thing that every single guest, every single person that has sat in that chair has said, the one consistent thing,
they don't like
it's that do not
Sorry, go ahead.
Is do not bet against the Patriots until they give you reason to.
They gave us reason.
No, they didn't.
Nick,
they came back.
Give me your top 3 teams.
They came.
Give me your top 3
Pittsburgh?
teams. No,
Pittsburgh 1.
Okay. History.
Kansas City 2.
Okay, wait a second. You and the Kansas City fans, how excited are you for your team to go 14-2 and you can't wait to get the bye and that first wait a second.
About this.
Wait a second.
You're right about
What
this.
about that first divisional playoff game with Andy Reid?
Yeah,
and
well,
all
you guys
the
always lose that.
And all the lack of success.
You're
right about that.
Okay, what's team number 3?
Oakland.
Okay.
What about that defense?
That was my big concern with Oakland coming into this year. I've been very impressed with how they played through 2 weeks.
You said you were concerned about Marshawn Lynch, too, as we get later in the year now. Him wearing out, right?
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right, which is why there's a difference between, by the way, power rankings and prognostications, and you bringing up my hometown Chiefs' litany of playoff failures is dirty pool, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, I told you. That's
trying to give me post-traumatic stress at 7:11 a.m.
Dallas Cowboys coming in 9th on that list. Seems like everybody has been piling on to Ezekiel Elliott, except my kid, by the way, all week for Zeke's lack of effort after an interception against Denver. Didn't help that Zeke had just 8 yards in the game. Some good news for Elliott. Owner Jerry Jones is coming to his defense, saying Zeke isn't the only player to blame.
Well, I think if you look at everybody's reaction to that interception, you could have, if you really looked at several Dallas Cowboy players on that interception, you saw what would not, I think, be the case in a closely contested ball game. I think you can point to Zeke, but you really have to look at the general effort to chase that ball down by most of the people that were on the field. Dak now, of course, gave it everything he had to try to contain that interception, but still, you look at it across the board, you'll need more effort than what you see.
Mark, we've all been piling on to Zeke this
Sure,
week.
you should.
Is it?
You should pile
Dog
on.
pile.
Right.
Well, there you go. I was just going to ask you if it's too much. Is it overblown?
God.
Okay, there you go.
Listen, what is his biggest issue, right? I mean, legitimately, on the field, off the field, emotional maturity. Right? Yeah. He has made mistakes from an emotional and a maturity standpoint. And I understand, I've had, believe it or not, I've had my butt handed to me many, many times on a football field. Mm-hmm. The thing is you look at the film on Monday, man, and there is no worse feeling in the world when you look at your film and you haven't sold out for your teammates. You don't sell out for your teammates. That effort by the Dallas Cowboys is why they can't win a playoff game. That effort by the Dallas Cowboys is why they won't win a playoff game. If you're not sold out for the people that you play with, great leadership comes when you care more about the people you lead than you care about yourself. And that, to me, is selfish football that will never lead to championship football.
Does it matter what kind of player or who you are? Because CC was saying all week that, like, Randy Moss took plays off. You've seen guys take play off, and sometimes you say something and sometimes you don't.
In context for which I said it, Randy Moss also ran 50 yards down the field more than anyone in football.
No. That's why I said
there was an understanding that for him to do his job, Yes. Now, Randy didn't verbalize it the right way, the way you like football players to do it. Have I seen other players, interior linemen, take plays off? I'm not trying to make an excuse for Zeke. I'm saying this happens all the time, but it will be addressed. Like, this is the core of a football player and the team. I will play as hard as I can and as long as I can. I'll give you guys an example. Larry Allen, one of the great guards that ever played this game. He got, use your word, mollywopped by Reggie White. Reggie White abused him. He was embarrassed. He could barely sleep. Went to the weight room the next day and began the bench press. And in his mind, he said, that will never happen to me again. His own personal pride led him from that butt whooping he took from Reggie White, led him all the way to the halls of George Halas Hall to Canton. Now, there's players that will respond in different ways under adversity. Zeke did not respond the way we would want him to respond as a football player, and his biggest problem is he's not self-aware. And that's what's got him in problems off the field, and now that's what's getting him criticized, and everyone's dogpiling on him now because of that play.
Well, and this is, and you speak to what is my only real concern with this. Because listen, we talked about it Monday. I said it's a bad look. I did not think it would be a 3-day story. I didn't think people were going to be this worked up about it. I do not think it's a federal case. I think it happens. It happens. Zeke's a very prominent player. The cameras happen to catch the perfect angle of it. Sure. It's the Cowboys, so we discuss it. My one lingering concern is the game in which it happened. We have only seen Ezekiel Elliott have one bad football game as a pro. And we have only seen him do this once as a pro. If this was a game the Cowboys are losing, but he has 125 yards and he does this, then I just think, okay, listen, the guy spaced for a moment, took a play off. My only lingering concern is because he's going to face more adversity. Like, this was his first NFL adversity on the field, but every player in league history, no matter how great, has a bunch of bad games, has a bunch of adversity. The concern is does he disengage if he is not succeeding on an individual level? That's the thing that I'm curious to see moving forward.
I think here's something very interesting. And the Broncos defense will do this to you. Remember the Super Bowl with Cam Newton? I mean, they went, they struggled the next year. Remember when Aaron Rodgers went in there in 2015 and for about 6 weeks after, he didn't look like Aaron Rodgers? Yes. They'll do that to you. This defense will do that to you. This is the first time I've ever seen Dak Prescott look like a young quarterback. It's the first time. The first time I have ever seen him look like a young quarterback was Sunday. And that's the type of effort, your all-star running back, where you really want a guy to come out there. Listen, I understand 9 carries, 8 yards. It's a frustrating day. It's a frustrating day.
We've all had them, though.
Right. But, like, your team and your young quarterback is struggling, man. We need to all be kind of in this thing together. And it's just a bad look, and it's not a championship level effort.
You mentioned you've all had them. I wonder if the first is always the hardest. Because I can't think of, what's the last time Ezekiel Elliott struggled on the field? Not once in his rookie year.
Right.
Maybe never at Ohio State. Yeah. Probably kicked people's butt in high school.
He struggled at Ohio State, the Michigan State game, when he didn't give the ball, and he had the press conference afterwards and told the people he was healthy and should have been running.
But he wasn't ineffective. He just wasn't given the opportunities.
He also broke his wrist early in his career, which didn't allow him to play. Right. But the one thing that we're looking for, Nick, from our teammates, we're not worrying about having bad plays. We're worrying about what they're going to do when they have bad plays, because we all get bust straight in the nose. It happens week in, week out to the greatest players. But what you care about as a teammate, man, can I depend on you? Mm-hmm. Come hell or high water, can I depend? You got my back? Yeah. We used to have a roll call around the locker room. It wasn't to find out what the guys' names were. It was to find out who was here to play football. And when they had roll call in Denver, Zeke didn't show up. Everyone else checked in for the game. But Zeke did not check in. And that's one of the fundamentals that we do in football, all right? We're going to check in together, and you know what? We're going to all check out together. Right. And that's when the game is done. And that's just something that he's going to have to overcome within his locker room, because his teammates, Zeke hasn't let them down. I know he's getting a lot of heat from fans and everything. His teammates have video of him playing with tremendous effort, and they know this play is an outlier. So I don't see it as a problem moving forward, especially if he doesn't show that behavior.
You hope that it's a learning experience, and I understand the frustration, and we've all been there from the frustration. But with that, even when you're struggling, like you're struggling, things aren't going your way. We've all been there. At least you, as my opponent, you're going to walk away with a bloody nose. I may have got my butt whipped for 64 plays, but you're walking away with a bloody nose.
You will be sore tomorrow.
It's going to be a street fight. And that's the thing that bothers you.
Dude, man.
No, I'm not. I'm the nicest guy in the
Wait,
world.
guys, did we hear from Zeke? Did Zeke ever talk about this? Have we
Not
heard?
yet.
He has not said anything about it.
Because after the game, I don't think he was asked about it, and he hasn't been available since.
The Giants haven't been able to get anything going on offense. 13 points in 2 games, not so great. And this isn't anything great either. They were 26th in scoring last season. Head coach Ben McAdoo addressed his concerns yesterday.
We got to learn to get out of our own way. We had some failures last night, and failures aren't fatal, but failure to learn from it might be. So, we're not going to panic. We're not the first good team to start 0-2. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's insanity. It's not working. So we're going to look to make some changes this week, like we did last week, maybe a little more drastic.
Coach Eric Mangini still with us. Coach, does McAdoo need to give up play calling to right the wrongs on this team? Is he just a little overwhelmed by his to-do list when the game starts?
It is very hard to call plays and then be the head coach. It's hard because you've got to think through what's happening in the next series. Your defense is on the sideline at that point. You're not involved with the things that they're doing, the adjustments they're making, things that come up on special teams. You're present, but you're also talking to the offensive coaches to figure out things that went well the last series, things that didn't go well. I think wearing both of those hats is extremely difficult, and you need to be the head coach of the whole team. Now, some people have done it really successfully. I do think there is significant value to overseeing it and then trumping calls that you don't like or guiding it, but flexible enough so that you can deal with everything else that's going on in the game.
Yes, and sometimes as a head coach, but we've had this debate for years. Guys who are proven coordinators, and once they become the head coach, been able to manage all those responsibilities that go on in a chaotic sideline. Not smooth. I'm talking about chaos is on the NFL sideline. So that's a normal criticism. But is there someone better equipped to call plays on the staff? So before we say, Ben McAdoo, he shouldn't be calling plays, there's not a proven play caller on their staff that I'm going to take this hard responsibility that I believe only a few people are good at and hand it to someone just because the optics outside, the fans are saying that I don't believe he can handle the responsibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you do something for the optics. If that's why you're doing it, and you're worried about what the fans say and you're worried about what the pressure is externally, you're probably in the wrong business. And if you're willing to change because of those things, that to me is a mistake. If you're willing to change because you feel like it's going to make you more effective as a head coach, it's going to make your team more effective, then to me that's a really smart decision. Now, maybe there isn't anybody better to call those plays, but he can still guide it all during the week. You can set up the call sheet. During the game, you can be on the line. You can evaluate how the guy does, but you've got to have a relationship with the other two phases, and you've got to be involved with those parts.
Here's what I know. If he's going to continue calling plays, he's going to have to show that it's not overwhelming him from his most primary responsibilities as the head coach. Cris, who is the only person other than players that can call a timeout for the team?
Head coach.
Head coach. And we saw when this game is still in the balance into the first half against the Lions. The Lions get stopped on a 3rd and 10. It is 4th and 3 on the 38-yard line with 1:15 left. It's a 7-point game. New York has all 3 timeouts. Inexplicably and indefensibly, Ben McAdoo doesn't recognize time, score, situation, doesn't call timeout, and deprives his team of a chance. That kick hit the crossbar. It's a 56-yarder. That is a less than 50% chance you're going to make that kick. You had the opportunity to have the ball at the 40, around the 40, with 1:10 left, 2 timeouts to go score yourself. If he had to do that, he was asked about it yesterday. He said, I was worried that they were going to go for it on 4th. That's not a good justification.
Well, actually, I was just thinking about it. When you make that decision to take a time out there and they go on the sideline and they figure out, oh, this is a really good 4th down play that we like, one of those got-to-have-it plays we talked about yesterday, you've got that situation as opposed to them coming out and having to kick the field goal. And look, let me just say something about time management. It is really, really nice to be able to talk about time management here. But when you're in the moment, you have people in the box who are trying to help you out. You've gone through different scenarios, but it's not perfect.
Well, so this is my question, and I brought this up to Cris before the show, and he almost, for the first time in our relationship, he almost struck me. So I'm now going to bring it up to you, since you're between us.
I wouldn't say that's the first time.
We see,
Coach.
We see,
Come on, man.
in other sports, teams go outside of the sport to add intelligence. We saw the movie Moneyball and the book Billy Bean's. We saw how did they pick players? They had a kid from Yale who knew very little about baseball build an algorithm. We've seen the Philadelphia 76ers. How are we going to rebuild the team? We are going to essentially go into the finance MIT world to figure out the best process. Daryl Morey, similar, an MIT guy running the Rockets. Why is football? What would be wrong with this? Hey, the head coach does have too much on his plate. It is difficult. If people on their couches are yelling, you got to use a timeout, and the football coach, who knows more than us, isn't recognizing it, why can you not assign a guy whose only job is know when to use your timeouts? Understand before the 2-minute warning, after the 2-minute warning. Understand the math of we got to take it right now if we're going to do this, and have that be his only job. You could be a $50,000 a year weekend job for a smart guy. What's wrong with that?
I had the former head of replay officials who had retired the year before helping me out in Cleveland with challenges, and it wasn't 100%. And that's no knock on him. This is the guy who made every single decision as to whether or not it was the right or wrong thing when you made a challenge, who now is on the payroll, who was working with us during the week, who was coaching our officials that we had at every single practice. And in real time, there were times where we didn't make the right decision. So I can tell you that even when you bring in the experts, even when you bring in the math, even when you bring in all those things, there's going to be mistakes that are made. Is it what you're looking for? No. But sitting here and talking about it, God, that's so much better.
Wait, Coach, can we just get back to the Giants for a second? Let's get Giants specific. You want to talk about removing play calling duties. CC brought up a good point. Maybe there's no one else that can. So let's get down to this actual offense. Is there someone else on this team who you think can do a better job play calling, or should it be Ben McAdoo and he just has to get himself, I don't know what the word is, better organized?
No, Ben McAdoo is organized. It's so easy to blame the coach because all the plays are designed to have success. But you know what comes into play, Jenna? They're human beings. And you know what happens? It's human beings going against other human beings who are really, really talented. So a lot of times, we as fans, prognosticators, analysts, you know, we don't want to blame the players because we don't really like talking about the players. But the Giants got a lot of players on their offense that are not very good. All right? So it's his job to come up with some type of system that they can have offensive success. I don't think it has anything to do with the play calling. I don't think it has anything to do with their problems, but it's a nice way to be able to move the conversation to now that guy shouldn't be calling plays. They've done a bad job as far as putting help around this roster. Now, he had a couple different looks in the game that were good looks. Brandon Marshall, late in the game, if he catches that ball, do you question the play calling? Eli Manning, when they have 4th down, the clock is right in front of him, all right? It's through the end zone, about the eye level of the goalpost to his right. He's looking at the play clock, unless they're in a no huddle, every single play. If he would have called timeout, we wouldn't be talking about this. So what's subject to the play caller, what's subject to the plays, is a human being doing his job. And the Giants have more players getting whooped in their individual battles than they do X and O mistakes. So that guy should keep calling the plays. If y'all want someone to complain at, look at them people up in front blocking, all right? Because they haven't done a good job, and they're getting paid a lot of money to do that.
So we are joined by our lead college football analyst and greatest transitioner of all time. That's me, Joel Klatt. Hey, Joel, how are you?
A real quarterback with no excuses.
Fantastic. How are you guys today?
Joel, our guy.
All right, let's dive right in, Joel. Starting off with last week, you called the Texas USC thriller. Even though they lost in overtime, you believe Texas is back?
You know, the only reason I laugh is because I feel like we've talked about this so many times before with Texas, and I understand that they're trying to chase this ghost of past success. But what I loved about Saturday night was they were no longer chasing that ghost. For me, that was the cornerstone, kind of a foundational piece for Tom Herman moving forward so that they can achieve some sort of future identity. Listen, it felt different than past performances, certainly, namely because their defensive front seven. Poona Ford, their nose tackle, he was dominant in the middle of that defensive front seven. Malik Jefferson played the best game he's ever played in a Texas uniform. But the only thing that I would say is we've got to pump our brakes. First of all, they got to figure out their quarterback position because Sam Ehlinger could not throw the ball on a consistent basis on Saturday night. And we've seen this before. They beat Oklahoma 2 years ago in a year in which Oklahoma went to the playoff. We could have said they were back then. They beat Notre Dame early last year. A lot of us, including myself, said, boy, that's a cornerstone landmark win for Charlie Strong, and it didn't pan out. We need to see consistent effort from Texas before we can say that they're back.
Joe, I want to stay at that game, USC. Their quarterback, Sam Darnold, it seems like every week we need new information. I saw him make a couple brilliant plays. Do I personally need to pump my brakes on Sam Darnold? Or what did you see, or a couple things you might have saw in week number 2 that stood out as far as Sam Darnold?
Well, the thing about Sam is that there's only a few players on either level that you can say that the team can be on their back and they'll still succeed. And he can take you to a win. And that's what I saw Saturday night from Sam Darnold. He was average at times, yes, but when his best was needed, he was there. And you've heard the old adage, and I just kind of touched on it, that like great players play their best when their best is needed. But I actually don't quite buy into that because to me, and maybe Cris, you would have a thought on this as well, I think great players are great when greatness is required. And what I saw with down 3, inside of 40 seconds left on your own side of the 50, greatness was required. It wasn't like, hey, we need you to play your best. Anyone can go out there and do their best. I mean, greatness was required, and Darnold rose to that level, drove him down there, got the game-tying field goal, and then won it in overtime. That was pretty special, and there are only a few guys out there that have that type of ability.
And in that game, shout out to the true freshman walk-on kicker that hit a couple huge kicks. But I want to talk about your game this week, Notre Dame, Michigan, 2 teams that have struggled somewhat last year. What do you think they're beginning to start this season?
Yeah, so Notre Dame, and I'll be headed up to East Lansing, and Michigan State obviously went 3-9 a year ago. Both programs need a bounce back. And to me, going into the season, there was 2 huge questions, one for each team. Notre Dame had to get over the fact that they were losing so many one-possession games because that was really their bugaboo a year ago, and Michigan State needed to solve the quarterback position. So that's what you needed to see in the first few weeks of this season to see if they had answered those questions and they were ready to move forward. On the Notre Dame side, they changed their staff. They did a lot of different things with Brian Kelly there, and yet they come out and in their first opportunity to win a one-possession game, they weren't able to do so. So they lose to Georgia at home in a game that was winnable, and they didn't run the ball very well. So they lose 20-19 in a one-point game. So that question remains to be answered. Meanwhile, on the Michigan State side, they had to solve that quarterback issue because Mark D'Antonio, throughout his career at Michigan State, he's always had that stalwart at quarterback, whether it was Kirk Cousins or even a guy like Connor Cook. They had had so much success with that pocket passer. And so now they seem to have found a player, a guy that they really like, that they think can control the game from the pocket, but also has some elusiveness and running ability on the outside. Brian Lewerke. And at least through 2 games this year for Michigan State, they seem to have answered that question in the affirmative. So Notre Dame right now still seeking some answers, whereas Michigan State thinks that they're building on something with that quarterback, Brian Lewerke.
Hey, Joel, taking a look at the earlier game on Fox, Michigan against Purdue, Michigan struggled with its last 2 opponents, particularly in the red zone. You concerned about their offense moving forward?
No doubt. I mean, that's the most important zone on the field. You've got to be able to score touchdowns. You kick field goals, you're going to get beat, in particular in the college game. And one thing that I know about the red zone, right? When the field starts to condense down, it does two things to put stress on your offense. One, it becomes more difficult to run the football because you just can't block everybody. The safeties are too close to the line of scrimmage. And two, the throwing windows start to condense and they start to get tighter just based on space. So accuracy from your quarterback becomes paramount. And Wilton Speight has just not been a very accurate passer during the first few games of this season. He's had guys open. And if you watch some of their games and watch their tape, he's had players open down in the red zone and he'll overthrow them or throw it at their feet. He has to play better because 1 for 10 in the red zone when it comes to red zone possessions and touchdowns scored is not going to get it done. This is a team that I think is everywhere else built for the playoff. But if they don't get that red zone scoring offense fixed, they're going to be in some trouble when they face the likes of Penn State or Ohio State.
Joe, inconsistent passing. You mentioned Ohio State. They'll be a heavy favorite for the next 4 weeks. What can I expect, Joe? Because 2 weeks ago, I left the Horseshoe feeling like I was Baker. I was Baker Mayfield. That's what I was. All right? He stuck a stake in our heart. What do you see from the Buckeyes as far as evolving as a team in their lack of passing game?
Oh, well, first of all, condolences because having a flag jammed in the block O.
But you said you love that. That's the college spirit. I was watching you.
On the inside for UCC. But Ohio State, here's why I'm not concerned with Ohio State is because, well, three things, namely. One is those coaches did not forget how to coach, and that is a great coaching staff led by Urban Meyer. They've got two great coordinators. I mean great coordinators. One from the NFL level who had a lot of success at Rutgers named Greg Schiano. The other who has been a terrific head coach and a wildly successful offensive coordinator in his career, and Kevin Wilson. They did not forget how to coach football, so they should be fine. They will figure things out. The other is their roster. Chris, that roster is one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in all of college football. They've got a great front seven on the defensive side. They've got skill on the offensive side with a pretty good offensive line. They will figure that out. And then the last thing is, in college football, your resume has everything to do with your ability to get into the playoff, and they have still got a lot of bullets in the chamber when it comes to resume builders. Remember, they're going to face Penn State at home. They've got Michigan on the road. Those two teams likely to be in the top 10 when they face them, and then potentially a matchup with Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. If they were to get there, Wisconsin would likely be in the top 10 at that point as well. So you're talking about 3 more opportunities to face top 10 opponents, and if they win all those 3, I don't want to guarantee, but I'll go on a long limb and say Ohio State would be in the playoff if they were to win out. So I'm not concerned about the Buckeyes right now.
Joel, we got about 60 seconds here. I just want to go back to the result that surprised me the most last week. I wasn't surprised that Clemson beat Louisville. I was very surprised that Lamar Jackson struggled as much as he did and that it wasn't a good game. What do you make of that, and what do you make of Lamar's struggles?
Yeah, so you could kind of see that one coming because Louisville struggled with Purdue. Around Lamar Jackson, they're not a very good football team right now. They're not very strong on the defensive side, and they don't block well up front. That offensive line has been protected by the human highlight reel that is Lamar Jackson for quite some time. So you can see this building. They struggle with North Carolina. And Clemson is better than we thought. Remember, their biggest question coming into the season was Kelly Bryant, their quarterback. Would he be able to replace Deshaun Watson? He's answered that in the affirmative. That is a great defense led by Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator. Clemson is primed for another playoff run. This is going to be the 3rd straight year, I believe, that they're going to be in the college football playoff.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. For Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.